This video, we have a special guest. His name is Diego, and he's currently a product manager at LinkedIn and also a YouTuber. In this video, we're going to talk about a couple things. Should you become a product manager, and how can someone go from a associate product manager to a senior product manager, and how to prepare for a product manager interview. Now, throughout this video, if you have any comments or any feedback or any video ideas that you'd like to see me making in the future, please comment down below. So, welcome to this show. Thank you very much for having you.
Eric, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here and share everything that I can about product management. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Awesome. So Diego, can you tell us a bit more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am originally from Mexico. Mexico City is home for me. I studied electric engineering, but I actually never worked as an engineer. I ended up working as a consultant in data. And at some point I said, you know what, I'm kind of tired of data. I was very naive at that moment. So I wanted something different, and that's what led me to explore other career paths. And not knowing exactly what I wanted to do, I thought of maybe doing some other degree that could maybe help me figure out what I wanted to do. And that's how I ended up doing an MBA in the US. So I moved in 2015 to Duke University to do my MBA. And the most interesting thing about it is that that's where I learned about product management. And I fell in love with the role immediately. I started talking to my classmates, to people in the industry, and that eventually led me to my first job as a PM at Cisco. I ended up moving to California and working there for a couple of years. 2 years later, I thought that the networking industry was maybe not for me, so decided to move then to Seattle to work for Microsoft in AI machine learning. Happy to talk more about it. And finally, last year, I moved back to California, but now to work as a senior PM at LinkedIn. And that's a little bit about myself and how I ended up moving from different places and coming all the way to a senior PM at LinkedIn.
I see. You mentioned earlier that you got interested in product manager, and then you got into an internship at Cisco. How did it spark your interest? Like, what did you like about product manager that really attracts you?
When I was studying for my MBA, and let me also make a big parenthesis here to say that you do not need an MBA to become a product manager. For me, it was the other way around. I started my MBA and then I learned about product management. But what I really liked about it, and the way that I started discovering that it was a path for me, was because I started looking at the different roles that you do in tech companies. That was my only certain thing for me. I wanted to be in a tech company. But looking at roles like operations, product marketing, strategy, finance, and so many others, and of course, product management, I took a job description, right? Just to make it a simple example. I took job description. And then I started thinking about, okay, so what are the different things that these different roles do? How does that compare to my previous experience as a consultant before my MBA? And then I started matching, okay, from this role, this is something similar to what I used to do in consulting. These are the things that I like, things that I don't like. And after starting to figure out which of these roles were closer to the things that I liked in my previous job, it started to point me in the direction of things like product marketing, strategy, and product management. Those were my top three. But what really made it a big difference, what really got me thinking, yes, I definitely want to be a product manager, was that I started talking to my classmates who went into internships, but also people in the industry. And after hearing how diverse and how different product management was between one company and another, and how exciting it sounded to me based on, again, my previous experience, that's really how I got into product management. And let me close with one thing by saying the important thing here was that I understood from my previous experience what transferable skills I had to get into product management. So it was not completely disconnected from my past. I had a good story to tell, and that's what really sparked that interest and helped me land my job in product management.
I see. Now that also leads me to my next question, your product management journey. Can you also tell us a bit more about, how did you transition from, Cisco internship to, where you are now, senior product management at LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you're right. Like you mentioned, I started to figure out that journey, right? Hey, these roles work for me. These others don't seem that interesting. And eventually I found my call, so to speak, by looking at my transferable skills and looking at the things that I used to do. When I joined Cisco, I started learning about the day-to-day of a PM. I shadowed senior PMs in the team. I learned about working with my engineering, designers, legal, HR, marketing, and all the other roles that at one point or another touch the day-to-day of PM. But once you get ramped up on those, let's say those day-to-day aspects of a PM, you would think that the technology is one of the most important things to also learn from a PM perspective and start going deep as an expert into that technology. And that's what I thought then. But the problem for me was that I was not very excited about the industry. Networking industry is exciting for some people, but it was definitely not for me. And so I started searching for something that was a little bit more of, let's say, more dynamic, that offer a little bit more, a wider range of possibilities to explore in the tech industry. So after doing a lot of research, I ended up getting an interview at Microsoft. And the funny thing is that this was for a role in AI and machine learning that I had no previous experience with and no previous knowledge of AI and machine learning. But I was able to convince the team that I had everything, ready to demonstrate that I could be a great PM in the day-to-day activities. And the technology component, I would be able to learn it. And I had a plan to learn it fast. And that eventually convinced them. And I proved that I could learn about AI and machine learning. And I got really excited into it. That we can go deeper into how to go from, say, PM to senior PM. But the short answer for now is that I started to move from execution more into strategy and vision of products. And that was a good starting point for me to come PM to senior PM at Microsoft. But then eventually, especially in mid-2020, when I started to create content, and again, we can go deeper into that story, but when I started to create content, I became very active on LinkedIn and YouTube. Last year, in the middle of last year, one of my comments sparked a mutual conversation, a coffee chat with a PM lead at LinkedIn. And after talking about, hey, what am I doing and how I'm helping people find jobs, and especially getting to product management, I got invited to an interview with the team, which I am with now. But the big thing that made that change from AI machine learning, which a lot of people come and tell me, hey, that's amazing, it's really cool. What are you doing in AI, and why did you move to LinkedIn? I still carry with me those lessons that I learned in AI machine learning, but now the field, the type of industry, the type of problems that I'm solving are really close to me, are things that I really, really care about. I'm helping people to find jobs. I'm helping people to succeed in their careers through a product like LinkedIn, which is something that I really enjoy doing. And so I think that if you're a PM who likes to just go up fast, go super deep into an industry and just continue your career there, I think that's awesome. Your scope will increase. If you're a PM like me who likes to find problems that are really interesting to you, really close to things that you believe in, then that's also very okay. I don't think there's a straightforward path for PMs. I don't think there's a best career option for PMs. I think every PM starts to charter their own path. And that's how I ended up at LinkedIn in a nutshell.
Wow, that's awesome. So I also want to clarify something. So you mentioned that you got a job at Microsoft in AI section. Now, during the interview, do they ask you knowledge in AI or machine learning? Do you just have to show or demonstrate that interested in this technology? Like, what is it like?
Right. So they do ask you technical questions, and I was not able to answer them. So how did I end up getting the job? That's probably the next question. They will ask you questions. Let me make a big clarification here, right? If I were applying to an engineering role, probably it will be more about day-to-day execution and programming of AI machine learning models and why, using certain parameters versus another, and how to solve some technical problems around machine learning and AI. In the case of a PM, it's more about, do I understand the language, the nuances, the differences between one model and another, not because I'm going to code them, but because I'm going to talk with data scientists every day who are going to work on that, and I need to understand the technology. But I didn't know any of those answers. I only took one class in statistics during my MBA years before my interview, and I definitely failed that part of the interview. But here's the interesting part, right? As a product manager, like I was saying, when I moved from Cisco to Microsoft, the day-to-day of a product manager, I knew that I had things to demonstrate, that I had the skills that I could learn technology fast, that you could put me in a place where I would have no idea about it and learn really, really fast to become very helpful, useful, and guiding the team into successfully launching products features. So the way that I convinced them is saying, you know what, I don't know about machine learning enough to answer these looking backwards, four very simple questions, but here's a plan, right? Here's what I'm going to do in my first few days. I'm going to enroll in these courses. I'm going to take these, tests. I'm going to, use this website. And my plan is to ramp up as fast as possible in the first, 90 days to become at least fluent enough to talk the language with the data scientists. So even if you don't have the expertise, it's not a lost cause. Hopefully that's what's coming across here.
I see. And then like for someone who maybe going to the similar path as you, like, want to get into like product management in AI or something, do you recommend to go the similar approach as you, learning about the machine learning, taking some courses, or do you think that it just to demonstrate that you have the capability of learning, or you're willing to learn, will be able to, get the job?
That is a tough answer because my go-to default answer is going to be it depends, right? If you want to maximize your chances of succeeding in an interview that it's going to be with an AI and machine learning team, definitely brush up on your skills about AI and machine learning. I was running out of time my full interview. We had I was going to go on vacation. The manager who then became a manager at Microsoft was going to go on vacation. So between getting the interview and my offer, it was for me 1 week, which is extremely rare at Microsoft. But here's what I would have done if I had more time. There's a fantastic website for data scientists called Kaggle.com. And in that, they have free courses about the basics of machine learning and Python. And if you take the first few modules, that's pretty much everything that you need to demonstrate that you know the basics of machine learning. It won't be enough in your day-to-day, but it will be enough to give you the idea of what data scientists go through. Because let me make one observation here. The interview is not about how well you know the machine learning algorithms, or whether you know what hyperparameter tuning is, or precision versus recall, which one would you choose. It's not about that. It's about understanding what the data scientists go through in their day-to-day, because that's going to be your team. You have to understand what they go through in order for you to be an efficient PM. So looking back, I don't recommend anybody do follow my path and just trying to wing it and trying to come up with a plan. I always recommend people to study. It worked for me. Part of it was lucky, but also part of it was I could demonstrate my other skills, my other abilities, and have a plan. But I can't say that it will always work for everyone.
I see. So basically getting like a general understanding about this industry, but not like too into the, each section will get you really good understanding before the interview.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the more you practice, the better. If you're interested in AI and machine learning, I always recommend to have your own portfolio. Again, go to Kaggle website, do competitions, create your own AI models to observe certain data or do some analysis. Have a portfolio to demonstrate that you understand. Once again, if I can put it in a very simple way, coding a decision tree, one of the most basic algorithms, coding a decision tree takes 2 lines of code, probably 1 if you do it in a good way. That's pretty much it. But understanding how you get the data, how you clean the data, how to prepare the data, then what algorithm to use, and then how to tune that algorithm for a best result, and then what are all the treatments that you need to apply both to the data and to the algorithm, that's going to be your day-to-day as a PM. So knowing how to code it is 1 line of code. Knowing everything around it, that's what you're going to be asked about, and what's going to be your day-to-day. So I always recommend people to not only get the course, which is free in this website, but also get up and running your portfolio. To put it in a very simple comparison and finish this point, just like for many engineers have their own GitHub account where they have all the portfolio, this is the same equivalent. It's a Kaggle, it's a Jupyter notebook, it's online, it's public, and you can share it with everyone, and that's going to be your collection of portfolio.
Yeah, awesome. So I noticed that you're a senior product manager at LinkedIn, and according to level.fyi, seems like senior product management is a 1 level above just a regular product manager, and there's also associate product manager. So for someone who got a role like, for example, associate product manager, how can they level up to become a PM, and how can they go from PM to like senior product management level? How can they climb this corporate ladder?
When you read books, hear podcasts, read articles, watch videos about product management, we always talk about the full cycle of responsibilities of a PM, right? From execution, planning, user research, strategy, vision, and so on and so forth. And it's a very, very colorful description of product managers. The reality is slightly different. Is when you are not in a startup, but in a larger size company, especially the ones that we see like LinkedIn, Microsoft, or Google, there are so many PMs, not enough, but so many that you're not responsible for absolutely everything. So as an example, associate PMs are typically focused more on the execution side. So the vision, the strategy has been set. We know the customer pain points. Now it's time to make the execution phase of that, working with designers, engineers, all the way until launching, and then working with the marketing. And typically associate PMs and PMs start to learn the very basics there. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's easier, but because there's already something set in motion for a new feature, a new product, it's it's a softer entry into product management. When you get more into PM and senior PM, especially, more on the latter, the senior PM role, you start shifting that to be more strategy, vision, in terms of your role and responsibilities. And you still do execution, but maybe a little bit less, depending on the organization, depending on the team, so on and so forth. But it's much more expected that you're going to be focusing more on the vision and the strategy, and that you are basically running the show on your own, saying, hey, here's your responsibility, here's your set of features or your product, and you're going to run with that. There's no more support net, in the sense that no other person will be leading the project. It's basically you. So that's a little bit, again, in large tech companies. Startups is a very different wild animal here. Startups is more about jack of all trades, and you'll do whatever is needed at whichever time is needed. But if we think of this structured approach that we see here, now to your question of how do you make that progress? Well, the reason why I wanted to make that explanation is because a lot of people think, for example, when I got promoted to senior PM, a lot of people ask me, hey, what are you responsible for now? Like, what's your new role? What's your new responsibility? And the first thing that happened to me was I got this kick of imposter syndrome. I was like, holy, now I'm a senior PM. What am I going to do? And then I kind of relaxed and looked back and said, all right, it's not that I need to do something new. The things that I've been doing for the past 6 months or 1 year, I've been doing the work of a senior PM already. I need to continue on that trend and then keep adding things, so that now as I look into principal PM or the next level, I need to keep adding responsibilities to that. So to get promoted, you can't simply go into your manager and say, hey, I want to get promoted today. It's more about thinking about, hey, talking with your manager, hey, I do want to become the next level from associate to PM. What are the things that I need to focus on? And they're going to tell you more about, have to do this, do that. Here's a few skills that you need to build on. And you have to do that work consistently for at least, say, 6 months, because what you're doing is you're demonstrating that you can take the responsibilities of the next level. And you have to consistently do that. That's why it takes time, because you need to prove that it's not a one-time thing. It's you maintain it and you just keep growing it and growing it and growing it. And that's how I got promoted to senior PM. And that's my plan to get promoted to the next level, is I will do the things that I need to do as a senior PM, and then start taking responsibilities on the next level and the next level and the next level. So that's my, say, short advice for that. But always basic recommendation, talk to your manager, make a plan. It shouldn't be a surprise. It shouldn't be something that, falls from the sky. You should be aware of when you're getting promoted, because you've been doing the work from the ground up.
I see. So it's more like, communicate with, the product manager and try to set up a plan. Now, do you see the differences? Like, what's the difference between senior PM versus like the next level, like principal PM or even director? Yeah. Is it like bigger, more responsibility, or is it, something else?
I love this question, because I think as a PM, you have two tracks, right? And then we don't talk about this a lot, but as a PM, you can go the individual contributor track. And for example, maybe you specialize in marketplaces and you are great at, let's, make it up, at strategy and vision, right? So you're going to become that person that you may not have anyone reporting to you. So you're not a manager. You continue being that individual contributor that everybody goes to when they need advice on marketplace, strategy, and vision. And so you become that expert that is going to tell the company, the organizations, this is the place that we're going next. Here's the next, 3 years for us. You can become that person. You can also be the best, amazing execution or whatever other parts of product management that you enjoy. And you don't necessarily need to be a manager. If you become a manager, and by the way, your titles are meaningless. The reason why I say that is you can become a principal PM and be an individual contributor, or become a principal PM and be a manager. So titles at some point, don't focus too much on that, focus more on the responsibility. If you're a manager, now your role is to enable your team of product managers to deliver, the product, the features, whatever it is. And when you think about a company, especially us in tech, we don't say, oh, I'm a PM for Google. I'm a PM for Google advertisement on this specific, niche, or in this specific section, or in this specific product. So we are responsible for one small piece of the whole company, right? So as a principal PM manager, where you have PMs reporting to you, you might be the owner of, say, for example, all of Google Ads. I'm making this up on the fly, but Google Ads. And so you'll have PM responsible for very specific things on that product. And your job is not only to lead the vision and the strategy of entire Google Ads, but it's also to make sure that your team has everything they need to execute on that vision and that strategy.
Definitely sounds a little similar to a software engineer as well, where software engineer, you can also be an IC, or you can also go down the management route.
Exactly.
As well. Yeah.
Exactly.
Very interesting. Now, my other question is for people who are, trying to to or interested in this path and want to become a product management, but very interested in how to prepare them. And I know that your channel has a lot of content talk about how to prepare for interviews for product management. Now, could you give us like a maybe like overview, like a path, like a roadmap on like how to prep them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when you prepare for product management interview, the most important thing is to know what they're going to ask you. And it sounds obvious, but trust me, a lot of people don't do this. I'll give you an example. You can't make just one preparation for all the companies, because if you interview with Amazon as a product manager, 90% of your interview is going to be behavioral questions. Whereas if you interview with Google, they don't care about behaviorals, but they care about product execution and product design questions. So knowing with which company you're interviewing with, it's going to make a ton of difference. Even for startups, if they have information, that's great. But if not, at least preparing on the top ones like product design, product strategy, so on and so forth. So that's step number one, knowing what you're going to get interviewed on. And there's plenty of information online. And if not, there's plenty of people on LinkedIn who might be able to help you by connecting and asking this question. Now, the next step is understanding your timeline. I think that the biggest mistake people do when preparing for interviews is they prepare when they know they have the interview. By the time they know they have the interview, they have 1 week or less to prepare for their interview. And it's probably why most people fail their product management interview. So my recommendation is, as soon as you know you're going to apply for new jobs, start preparing. Because here's how I break down my preparation for interviews. I started practicing very basic, what I call research questions, like tell me about yourself. Why do you want to join this company? Why do you want product manager if you're not a PM already? And then I move on to behavioral questions, and I prepare the way that I would prepare an Amazon interview, which is look at their leadership principles and try to come up with matches to, or let's say take 2 or 3 leadership principles, create a behavioral star story type of questions, so on and so forth. And then I move on to the heavy part of interview: product design questions, product metrics, strategy, product execution, anything else that I can research on, because it's going to take me at least 1 week, maybe 2, to prepare all of that. And then just to finish this thought on how to prepare, I think that all of that is slightly useless unless you practice. Mock interviews is probably also one of the most important things to do in your preparation, and I don't see a lot of people doing. Practicing is super important. You don't want to be in a position where your next interview is the first time you say a product design question out loud. So that's a little bit of how I prepare. But like I said, research, take the time to prepare, and do mock interviews would be kind of the 3 steps that I would take.
I see. Now, for product manager or PM, is very competitive. Like if you look at the ratio between PM and SDE, that's like 1 to like many. So how can someone stand out in the interview? Like how can they go above and beyond their interview? What are some tips or some secret sauce?
Yeah, let me start by saying that it is not that hard, because most people don't prepare. That's the secret sauce. Is a lot of people come to an interview with me, and I ask them a question like, how would you improve your favorite product? And they spend the next 15 minutes telling me about their favorite product, and we haven't even we haven't even had time to ask them this part of the question, like, all right, how would you improve it? Or I ask questions such as, hey, we have this type of user, for example, somebody in a wheelchair, and we want to design a new type of fridge. And then they start going all over the place without any framework, and don't get me wrong, interviewers, we don't care which framework you use. We care about the framework because it will help you get structured. It will help you be concise. In an interview, you want to assess your communication. We want to assess that you understand what product managers do, and part of that is going to be your framework. And we want to make sure that you really understand a little bit of what you're getting into, right? Because when I asked this very simple question, how would you improve your favorite product? A lot of people started giving me their own perspective on the product. I don't care about their perspective. I care about what they think. Who are the customers and what are the customer problems? What customer problems should we solve and how to solve them? So standing out in these interviews is about being concise, about using framework, about being able to demonstrate that you have good communication skills, and about showing that you understand the role of a product manager. I know it's probably people expected like here's the magic formula, or here's the secret sauce that will help you get into product management. But the reality is that most people that I've interviewed actually don't prepare for their PM interviews. And you're absolutely right. It's super competitive, but that doesn't mean that everybody prepares well.
I see. Now, in terms of preparation, do you recommend using something like a mock interview, like prep, or have you ever used that? Because I used that before. I find that it's very different. Like you talk to yourself about how to prep versus you talk to like a real anonymous person. Prep is very different. Do you recommend that for prepping PM interviews?
100%, 100%. Yes, do mock interviews as many as you can. There's so many free communities and free places to do mock interviews. And also don't get scared when you hear people how much they prepare. I'll give an example. I've heard people saying, for my Facebook Now Meta interview, I did 150 mock interviews. I was like, wow, that's insane. For me, when I joined Microsoft, I did 12. And that doesn't mean that I'm a superstar rockstar that knows everything. Is when I got to number 12, I kind of got tired because I was saying the same things. I kind of understood the gist of, all right, this is how which ideas I'm throwing out there that resonate better with the other person. I'm hearing some of these new ideas that I'm going to incorporate in my own speech. And so it's really not about the number. It's about understanding that these mock interviews should give you the confidence, should give you ideas, but also should help you remove all the nervousness of the interview. That's what the mock interviews are about. It doesn't matter if you do 10 and you feel comfortable. It doesn't matter if you do 100 if you feel comfortable. You do you. Prepare in a way that works for you, and don't try to force somebody else's framework into your own personal style of preparing.
I see. Gotcha. So my next question is, learning resources. Because I know you've done a lot of content, and for those people who are maybe interested in product management, definitely check out, Diego's channel. A lot of helpful information there. Now, for learning resources, do you have any recommendation, like any books that you think this is something that you must read, or any learning resources like courses, online courses that you must take this, to really get good at product management?
I love this question because I think now that there's an explosion of resources, what people don't see is that if you want to learn about product management, every single one of us, the content creators and product management, we talk about exactly the same thing. Product management at a startup looks different than a big tech company and looks different than in a fintech and so on and so forth. But in the end, we talk about the same principles. We talk about the same topic. Here's my recommendation. And then I'll recommend my favorite book that has nothing to do with product management, but I believe every PM should read that. But I'll get to that in a moment. My recommendation about resources is this. Start with free content. And that doesn't just mean my channel. Of course, everyone's welcome to my channel, but maybe you don't like my style. Maybe I'm not the kind of person with whom you resonate. And that's very okay. Find somebody else who creates other YouTube videos or creates articles or blogs or Twitter, whatever your favorite place is to learn about resources. Start with free content. If at some point that doesn't really work for you and you say, no, I want to read something, some published books, there's plenty of them. Some of them are a little bit outdated, but go to the book. If that doesn't work for you, then go to the paid courses. If that doesn't work for you, then go to cohorts, classes, somebody live present who's going to teach you a class. Don't, in my personal opinion, don't go and throw thousands of dollars into a course right away, because the free content will offer you exactly the same thing. The difference is going to be, does that person, the content creator, resonates with you? Is it somebody that you like their style, that you like learning from them? Because whatever we're teaching you, you're not going to get, the secret sauce, the magic recipe somewhere else that is paid. It's just about, do you want to learn for free, unstructured, like our YouTube channels, or do you want a structured, classes, homework type of learning? But in the end, the concepts are exactly the same. With that in mind, let me jump into what I was talking about. One book that I recommend every single PM, every PM should read. Book is called The Design of Everyday Thing. This book is about design, and all designers, I don't know if in college, but at least in many master's program, they actually go through this book. What this book will teach you is how to think about design from a user-centric point of view. The example that I was giving earlier about how would you improve your favorite product, most people fail at it because they don't see how they should think about the user pain points, and improving the product based on the user pain points, not on their own opinion about product. And this book is fantastic at giving you that vision of how even common items like doors are really badly designed. They are not designed with the user in mind. And once you go through this book, your point of view about products, if you've ever grabbed a product and you haven't been able to open the bottle or open the door or warm a teapot, whatever it is, and you think, oh, I'm so dumb, it's my fault. No, it's not. It's the product's fault. It's the designers of that product fault. And that's what the book tries to teach you. Why I think every PM should read this, because we should design and think about products from the user problems, from the user's perspective, not from our own or the team's perspective.
I see. Who's the author of this book?
It's Don Norman.
Okay, got it. So yeah, that's very interesting. And my next question, or I should say my last question, is, some Q&A or some, if you have like any frequent asked questions that, you get a lot from your audience, you want to clarify, maybe we can also bring it up here. And one of my question actually is, you talked about this earlier, that there's two track where you can be an IC or a management. Now, I also actually want to ask you that question. Where are you planning on like going? Like, this is kind of like your own preference. Like, it really depends on everybody. But like, what's your like? Maybe you have a direction. Maybe still deciding. But like, what's your take?
Yeah, I love mentorship. I love mentoring people. That's why I do what I do, and that's why I reply to messages and coach people. So I definitely want to try the management route of getting in principal PM and so on and so forth. So I definitely want to try that. Am I going to like it? I have no idea, but at least I want to try. There's nothing wrong in trying something and then switching if I don't like it. I've been an individual contributor for over 5 years now as a PM. Yeah. So now I want to try the management piece.
So yeah. So do you have any frequent asked question that you want to clarify? Maybe we can talk about it here.
Absolutely. So this is a fun question, because one of the top questions that I get is, do I need to be an engineer to be a PM? And the answer is no. But then that also helps engineers think that, oh, then I have the advantage. And the answer is also no. And here's why. Here's my advice to engineers who want to become PM. The biggest trap that engineers fall when going into a PM interview is that they think that they need to forcefully put all the technology, all the tech jargon into a solution to make it complicated and flashy and, moonshot ideas and show that they're super creative with technology. But they fail most of the time when it comes to, you need to think about the user and the user's problem. It doesn't matter if your solution is simple or is flashy and out of this world. If it doesn't solve the problem, then your solution is worthless. And that's where I think that if you're an engineer watching this and you're thinking about breaking into product management, start investing much more time on, all right, let me think from the user perspective. Let me think of, what's the business scenario? What's our goal? Are we going to increase market share? Are we going to drive more sales? And if so, how do we tackle the user's problem so that we achieve that goal? So it's going to the other extreme. There are technical questions in product management, like we talk about AI, and that's where I think engineers will excel at those. Companies like Google will ask you technical questions for sure, while most other companies won't, unless the role is super technical. So engineers, I think that's the one thing that you don't need to prepare for, but you definitely need to rely heavily on studying about the user pain points, and definitely read the book Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. It's a great place to start.
Got it. Awesome. So yeah, for this show, and thank you, Diego, for having you on the show. Thank you very much for sharing this insights to people to help us understand if they should become a product manager, and how can they go from associate product manager to senior level, and how to prepare them, how to get good at them, like the resources that you mentioned. This is very, very helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eric, for inviting me. I had a ton of fun, and yeah, if anybody has questions about product management, you know where to find me.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Now, this is it for this video. Thank you very much for watching this far. Now, if you're interested to see more of this content, please consider like and subscribe this channel.